and it was a great tour. It's always nice to get off of the orchard and see what other people are doing and see what other leaders in the industry are doing. And I think it was just a couple of weeks ago I was talking on this very show about how I don't like wires in cherries, and to a large degree I don't. It's hard to farm cherries with wires. But after the tour this week, I was reminded once again of the advantages of doing that. If you can do it and you can do it well, and learn to farm around the wires and use the wires to your advantage. I visited a system. Some of you have been asking about UFO systems, and I saw a beautiful system. Marlon's going to drop some pictures here in the comments. You can look at them. The system was a UFO system. UFO stands for upright fruiting offshoots, and it's a UFO system. What that really means when they're talking about a UFO system, Marlon's going to drop a picture for you here. It'll show you the base of tree. Basically, what you have is you have a bottom wire. In this case, it had a lot of wires. But basically, as you grow those trees sideways, you put the trunk of the tree sideways, and then you grow that tree right down the wire. And you'll have shoots coming up off of that tree like this right here. And there'll be another tree over here that's planted over here. And it goes down this cord on here, and it has shoots coming off of it. And so basically, you have an entire wire of upright shoots that are spaced about, I don't know, 8-10 inches apart here. And they're just a wall of fruit. This particular system was on a 12x4, so almost 1,000 trees per acre. It was fifth leaf. They were well beyond the top wire and in full production. And the third picture that Marlon's going to post here is you can see these shoots here. Every single one of these shoots were absolutely loaded with fruit. This system's been used in a lot of places. I know people in Australia that have used in New Zealand, but largely it's been developed here at WSU, the research station over here in Prosser, just down the road from us. I know Dr. Whiting's been real involved in this, and I followed it for years. But the beauty of the system is you're always renewing wood. That's these offshoots right here. These are the offshoots they're talking about. And as those get too big or they get too old and you get another shoot comes in, what they'll do is they'll take those out, and they're always renewing every year. They're looking for opportunities to run new shoots. So that was really exciting. This particular system that I saw was Black Pearl, a beautiful cherry. Those are going to be ready here probably in about 10 days. Black Pearl on Gisela 12. So much fruit, that it's a challenge, probably thinning some of that fruit off so that they can get big. But again, it was pretty exciting. This orchard was a smart orchard. And so if you go to the last Wednesday where I did a post on this, you'll see some trees that have stickers on cherries. It has probes inside of the bark, probes in the ground, probes in the water. This is a fully smart orchard. The water is automated. The growth of the fruit is monitored and automated, and it's pretty exciting system. Smart orchard. Some of the advantages of the UFO system is it gets better light. It's V trellis, right? So you get a lot of light down in there. Ease of harvest. Pickers just love it. You can pick a lot of fruit from the ground. Probably the first 5 wires you can pick from the ground. It's great picking, great crops, but also it lends itself to future technology like platforms and mechanization and this type of thing. So that was pretty exciting. I really enjoyed the tour. It's nice to see new systems coming into play, and it's nice to have my mind changed. Yeah, it's a really good system and makes me want to do more on wires. I am doing some on wires, but also have some neighbors that are doing a real good job putting cherries on wires. The other thing that I wanted to mention is WSU's getting ready to release a new cherry. I thought that was pretty exciting. It's called the R19, largely because it doesn't have a name yet, but early cherry, about the same timing as Chelan, and real sweet, good eating, good flavor, doesn't seem to split real bad, has a lot of advantages. Chelan's a good early. So this R19, I'm looking forward to getting it and getting some of it in the ground. Looks like we got Colin Hale on board. Dr. Shabir Ahmad, nice to have you on board. Dafta Balikbar, nice to have you on board. And Terry Plant. Yeah, Terry Plant. Didn't he get biggest page contributor this week or something like that? Welcome, Terry. It's nice to have you on board tonight, and appreciate you interacting on the page as much as you do. We really appreciate that. Anyway, that's what I did this week. Also thinning a lot of apples, but with that, we're going to go ahead and get to your questions. So Ken Carapetus says, hi, Ken from South Australia. I'm an organic farmer. Is spraying gibberellic acid not natural? Yeah, that's a good question. technically spraying gibberellic acid is not natural, but gibberellic acid is a natural occurring compound. It's grown in nature. That's where it comes from. It's Omni approved. It's organic. It's a naturally occurring plant hormone that's grown in nature. How they're able to bottle it and get it in a gallon jug, I'm not real sure, but I'm sure they culture that hormone in the laboratory and propagate it somehow. I don't know the science of that, but I do know that it is naturally occurring and it's produced by nature and it's organic and it's a wonderful product. So great question, Ken. Yes, it is. It's naturally occurring. Although I guess the practice of going out and spraying it on an orchard or the not natural, but it is a natural product. It gives a natural response to the plant. So Netchie's River, and he's referencing the bacterial canker video that I did this week. He says, would quaternary ammonia be too expensive? I've never used quaternary ammonia before. I know that it's a base of cleaners. If you were to go in under your kitchen sink in there and look at some of your cleaners that you use in your kitchen and your bathroom and your hand wipes, you would probably see quaternary ammonia in there. I think it's a positively charged product that attacks cell walls. Beyond that, again, I don't know the science of it. I don't know how it works, but I do suspect that some of the products that we have used are similar to what you're describing here. I've used products such as it's called Oxycom for bacterial canker before and had some success. It's a like product, I think. I've used hydrogen peroxide. I had an orchard that had bacterial canker really, really bad one time, and the gummosis was forming up. And in addition to spraying it with this Oxycom, which is a form of hydrogen peroxide, I would put hydrogen peroxide in a bottle, pour the gummosis off, and spray the hydrogen peroxide on there, and it would dry it up. So it's possible. Is it too expensive? I don't know. I mean, they've gotten peroxide and some of these other products, developed and produced in bulk to where it's practical to buy them. So I suspect it may be, although I can't speak to it specifically because I've never actually used quaternary ammonia that I know of. But in understanding what the product is a little bit, it's possible that it may work. It's about sanitation. We'll be talking about this again in a minute, but some of these problems that we have, like bacterial canker and fire blight and Pseudomonas and some of these things, the first thing that you talk about when you're talking about cleaning those up is sanitation. So maybe. Demo, he has two questions. Bird control last resort. Spraying sugar water on cherries. His question is about sugar water. I think this may have come up as a question before. Somebody might have asked me if I used sugar before as bird deterrent, and the short answer is yes. In extreme situations with certain flocks like robins and starlings, I have sprayed sugar on before. And the idea is the birds will go after the cherry and the sugar makes them sick. I don't know if it's just too much sugar, but inevitably it makes them sick and they don't want any more to do with eating cherries. I think that's kind of how it works. It doesn't work on all birds, but as a last resort, I've done it. I don't like to do it because it's sticky and it's messy. You're asking for a rate. I don't give rates on the channel. We talk about that every week. Sorry, I don't do that, but I will give you a clue. We buy this sugar in 80-pound bags, and we spray it about 100 gallons per acre, and we use a lot of sugar. It takes a lot of sugar. So somewhere in that range, it takes a lot of sugar. I have done it. I would do it again as last resort. I know a lot of people that do it. He had a second part to this question. Codling moth. How many pheromone traps do you add per acre? He's talking about maybe hectare, but I'm going to talk in terms per acre just because that's what I understand. We'll repost that hectare per acre model that I posted some time back. I think it's reasonable to post that every now and then. So we're always kind of talking about the same thing, but real short, I'll give you a short answer. There's several things that we use in terms of pheromones for codling moth control. The first thing that we use is the lures. The lures go up in the canopy of the orchard, and they sometimes look like a bread tie or a bread clip. There's 3 or 4 different types of these. And the idea is that you get them up above the canopy of the tree so that it creates a cloud of the orchard of this pheromone. And so it's real important that you get them real high up in the tree. How many pheromones per acre? We use them in conventional blocks because we want to cover the whole ranch. And in the conventional blocks, we use them at a rate of 200 lures per acre. 200 pheromones per acre. In organic blocks, we do 400 per acre. So you'll see them in a diamond pattern staggered throughout the block. Conventional blocks, 200 per acre. Organic blocks, we use 400 per acre. But your question specifically says traps, so I suspect you're talking about monitoring traps. Monitoring traps, we would normally have one monitoring trap per 10-acre block. We would have a monitoring trap. We also have puffers in the orchard that puff pheromone in extreme cases where we need just a little more, maybe on a prevailing border. And we might put, maybe 2 or 3 puffers per acre. And those are usually on the borders only. Finally, in extreme cases, I've actually trapped codling moth before and use these bucket traps. They're just little bucket traps that you hang. Gosh, I forget the rate on those. It's either 10 or 20 traps per acre. And what you do is in the trap, you put mineral oil, you fill it up with a little bit of mineral oil. And then I think it's apple cider vinegar is the attractant. And then you put a lure in there and you can actually just trap those and clean it out and change that mineral oil every week, and you can be real effective in trapping. So that's the different things that we use. We use the pheromones that provide a canopy above the tree. We use puffers. We use traps to tell us how many are out there, and sometimes those are electronic. There are electronic traps with cameras now that they're using. Maybe we'll talk about that a little later. And then finally, there are traps that are used in organic fields and extreme situations. We've actually trapped them. So we actually do 4 different forms of pheromones or lures in codling moth control. And then, of course, it's real important that you follow that model of the flights. We're probably in the middle of a flight right now, and it'll kind of peak out here in another, 3 weeks. And it'll kind of dry up for a little bit. And then the summer, kind of as we get into the middle of summer, we'll get another peak that'll come up. And, in the last 5 years, we've had a couple of years where we've even had a third light that comes a little bit later in the fall. So we try to follow that model to know when to time our sprays and to be most effective. I hope that helps. David Tower has a question. He says, I'm a Western New York grower here. Do you do anything to push trees to get to the top wire? I know there's 100 different ways. I was just wondering if you had a preferred system. There are 100 different ways, but even in my system, there's 100 different things that you have to do, and you really have to get them all right. The most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is if you have, whether you have 6 or 7 wires, no matter how many wires you have on this, I like to have at least 7 wires. When I plant that tree in the ground, the very first thing I want to do is tie a string all the way to the top wire. And then as that tree grows, we're going to chase that tree all the way up that wire. And every time it grows a little bit, we're going to tie it. And we're going to keep it anchored to that string all the way up. If you let that thing grow without tying it and it gets to flopping around, it'll stop growing. So the number one thing is keep that thing, put a string and keep it tied to the string all the way up the wire. My trees in my backyard behind me here, I probably tie those things once a week. I'll get up there and I'll tie those things, keep chasing them up the wire. Second thing, of course, is fertilizer. Just keep fertilizing. If you have access to fertigation, fertigate them a couple times a week. If you don't, get you some. If you're a backyard grower, get you some Miracle-Gro and mix it up and put it under there and water that in and do that a couple of times a week. But just push them with fertilizer through the growing season here in the U.S. and the Pacific Northwest. That's till about summer solstice, to the middle of summer. And then I wouldn't give them any more fertilizer as you begin to head into the winter and they begin to draw reserves back down to the root system. Those are the 2 things that I'm going to give you, the 2 most important things. Get them on a string and keep them tied and push them with fertilizer. I hope that helps. Jerome Empey. Hi, Jerome. Hope you're on board tonight. It's nice to have you, your participation. We appreciate you. Jerome's question is, what technology tools do you think gives the highest return? Soil moisture probes, smart apply sprayers, automated traps, we just talked about that, weather stations, automated irrigation valves. I've tried a lot of tech. Some has paid off, some not so much. That's a good question. One of my goals as a leader, leading a company and an organization and a team, one of my goals as I near retirement has been to lead us into the technological age. So this is something that's close to me. It's something I put a lot of effort into. I know our organization has made the leap, and we've hired IT guys. We've hired tech guys that we can develop our own apps and have information, the amount of information that we have at our disposal is mind-boggling on a daily basis. So it's real important to track that, know what you're doing when you're thinning, to know every single day exactly how much it's costing you for that tree and for that block and costing you per acre. So having access to that technology so that you know what your labor output is, that's very important. But I'm going to tell you that the single piece of technology that has changed the farming industry more than anything else is, where's it at? Right here, the cell phone. When I was an up and coming manager, I just gotten out of the military, 30 years old. Cell phones were just coming out, and they were the size of a giant brick. And at that time, you know, a big orchard in those days was 200 acres, 300 acres was a good sized commercial orchard, and and a farmer, a good farmer, could manage 200 or 300 acres, but not much more than that. You know, whatever he could kind of drive to, he could kind of manage. But I'll tell you, with the invention of the cell phone, that same manager can today manage 10,000 acres just because of the cell phone. So the greatest piece of technology that's come along farming, in my opinion, has been and continues to be the cell phone. I can turn on the wind machines and the water, and it'll tell me how much water to put on to grow my fruit to a certain size, and I can tell the weather, and I can tell everything from this little piece of technology. So the cell phone continues to be the best technology, and the apps that go along with it. Your question was a little more specific. Soil probes, I think, are a great piece of technology, whether it's the technological kind or the hand kind that I talk about. Platforms, automated platforms. We're going to automated platforms. We're putting in blocks that are suited for automation. I'm on the panel that's developing the Ames harvester, the first automated robotic harvester with AI technology. So we want to make sure that our blocks are designed in two-dimensional systems so they lend themselves to platforms and that kind of technology. I think that's real important. We have a company that we work with called Phytech, and a lot of people around here are going to be familiar with Phytech. It's a company that provides to us apps on our telephone, which will give us access to soil temperature and soil moisture readings and frost and weather and frost reports and cold temperatures and ability to turn on wind machines and more and more. So we have a program, a tech program that's specifically called Phytech, which gives us access to all of these things. Probes out in the field that are monitoring the apple, wind inversion, frost, you name it, it's on there. So that's been a great piece of technology. And I know there are different technologies that are similar to that. But we've been real happy with the Phytech technology and the people at Phytech. They do a really good job. So yeah, Jerome, there's a lot of good technology out there. Biggest bang for your buck. I would plant my blocks in a way that they're accessible for platforms and automated machinery in the future. I think that's a good first step, and then automating those blocks. Got a lot of people on tonight. Looks like Perry Fruits is on. Matt Worm's on, Ralph Papania, Vicky Tucker, Raul Corona, nice to have you on board. John White, Cinco Anderson, got a good group on board tonight. If you have any questions, just post them in the comments. And hey, while you're on there listening, if you could type in where you're from, we really enjoy seeing all the different places around the world where people are from. So if you do that, we appreciate that. It makes it fun. Dolat Khan says, how to stop my apple from dropping. Boy, that's a bummer. You know, specific apples that kind of want to drop. Pears are that way. You know, pears have a real tendency as they get close to harvest, the stem will loosen up and they'll have a tendency to drop. Honeycrisp can do that. There's specific varieties that like to do that, but it can also be climate induced and drought induced. To answer your question, there's a product out there that's called NAA. There have been different forms over the years. I think now it's called NAA 600. Used to be NAA 200. NAA. Look up NAA. That's a great product. You spray that on a couple weeks before harvest, and it'll tighten up those stems and keep them tight to give you a little bit more time so you can get them picked. The other thing that I would recommend is just make sure you keep those plants hydrated so the stems don't naturally loosen up. Derek for apples says, what parts per million N would you suggest when pushing vegetative growth on smaller trees? I would suggest fertigating, and I would suggest 10 to 15 pounds of N twice a week through fertigation. If you can't do that, I would suggest that you broadcast it wet if you can in a liquid form, but if you can't, even dry, and then watering it in twice a week. I would do that at a rate of, I know it sounds drastic, but I would do it at a rate of 100 to 150 pounds of N per season. I would just push those things until I got them to the top wire, and then I began to pull it back and pull those limbs down and get that thing settled down. But when I'm pushing those things and I'm trying to get them to the top wire, I'm going to probably put on about 150 pounds of N per season on those growing plants. Derek, I hope that helps. Boss Sode says, biggest concern is bird damage and fruit set's very low. Yeah, that's tough. Bird damage, you got to be vigilant. You got to stay after it. Don't let your guard down. Don't let those birds get you. You got to keep them skittish. Throw the book at them. Everything we've talked. We use cannons, lasers, balloons, reflective paper. Walk around out there. Find something that puts off a big noise. Do it all. Once again, I always say the key to good bird control is do just a little bit better job than your neighbor. Fruit set is very low. I know how hard that can be when your fruit set's low. You do everything you can. I was talking just a couple months ago about Chelan blocks and how they don't produce over 5 tons per acre no matter what you do. We've done hydrostatic sprayers blowing pollen. We've blown pollen. We've had just full blooms, just these massive flowers, and we put in 6 hives per acre of bees. We've done everything to the sun, and I had just come to the belief that no matter what you do, Chelan's never set more than 5 tons per acre. And then this year came along, and we had the bloom. We had the perfect temperature during pollination. The weather was perfect for the bees. The bees were able to fly. The weather was perfect for the pollen to make its way down the pollen tube. Everything in the universe seemed to align and come together. And this year in Chelan's, for the first time in my entire life, we picked 9.5 tons per acre on Chelan's. So it can be done. Uh, I've had a lot of years of 2 ton and 2.5 ton per acre on Chelan's, and it's just so disappointing. I know how you feel, but I want to encourage you today that it can be done. All those things can come together, and the universe can align, and it can be done. So don't give up hope. You just got to do all of the above. Put plenty of hives out there. Make sure you got plenty of pollinizers. Just be vigilant. I hope that helps. Sorry to hear about that. Rick Wanera says, video thin fruit early. He's talking about one of the thinning videos, I think. He says, does it matter if you have to keep your tree small, 9 to 10 feet, and 4 to 5 feet wide? The branches are espalier. He's got them on a vertical trellis. Each side open vase stacked. Okay. Every year my trees are around this height. He's talking 4 to 5 feet. 4 plum trees, almost date. Plum, apples, Fuji's, peepers, apricots, bondhorn trees. Does it matter if you have to keep your tree small? I guess that's the question. 9 to 10 feet. 9 to 10 feet is not, and 4 to 5 feet wide. That's not a small tree. That's pretty normal tree. We grow them a lot smaller than that here. The question is, are you filling space? How far apart are they? And are you filling space? So in that acre, how much time does it take you to fill that space? That's why we plant trees at 2,000 trees to the acre. So that we can fill the space of each acre as quickly as we possibly can and begin to get a return on our investment. That's why we plant them close. But you can plant them wider, just bear in mind it's going to take you longer to come into full production because you have to fill that same space of an acre. So, but that's a good space, 9 to 10 feet high. That's a good height for a high intensity orchard, 4 to 5 feet wide. Nothing wrong with that. Espalier system, that's a great system. Get it done, Rick. So sounds like a good system. Send us a picture if you get a chance. Amit Roach, grower concerns, shot hole disease. There's a couple shot holes. There's shot hole borer. That's one kind, and that's a little borer that gets in the wood and it drills in and it drills these 1/2-inch holes and you have to spray for those. But the best thing you can do is make sure you don't have any piles of firewood, of cherry wood, or pear wood, or apple wood laying around your orchards because they will nest in those and they'll lay eggs in those and they'll hatch and they'll just infest your orchard. So once again, sanitation. You want to clean that up for the shot hole borer. I don't think you're talking about shot hole borer though. I think you're talking about shot hole disease and corneum blight. Once again, it's sanitation. It's the same things that we've been talking about with bacterial canker, Pseudomonas, fire blight. It's the same thing. You want to sanitation. Keep that old nasty wood out of the orchard. Get it out of there. If you see it, cut it out. During that cold period, if you can switch away from sprinklers and overheads and go to drip irrigation, that's good. Fungicides. Fungicides aren't going to cure a branch that's already infected, but it should prevent new branches from becoming infected. So there's some great fungicides out there. And depending on your area, I've talked a lot about recently about how copper no longer works in Washington State, but I don't know about where you come from. Maybe you haven't overused copper, and copper might be a good viable treatment for you. Lime sulfur might be a viable treatment. I don't know about Cassumin, but I suspect that maybe Cassumin would be a treatment. So two different types of shot hole bore on one side, sanitation, keep that old wood out of the orchard. You can spray for those in the dormant season, but I think you're probably talking about corneum blight or shot hole disease. So fungicides and sanitation. Leishon Rex, grower concern. How do I prevent bird damage? Just talked about that. I'm not going to go back into it again, but all of the above. Do everything. Sheikh Mohammed Abast. Some of my plants after sprout getting stressed day by day. What is the treatment? Getting stressed day by day. I'm not real sure. I don't have a good handle on what's wrong with them. But nutrition. Check the soil. Take a soil sample. See what's going on with your soil, and keep them hydrated. Hold them at 80% of soil moisture capacity. Don't drain the water out of your soil moisture capacity and then refill it. Keep it at 80% or as close to that as you possibly can. Don't let it become stressed. If your trees are getting stressed every day in the afternoon, it sounds like that might be a irrigation issue, but it's hard to say. I can't really say. Cotton Dalton, do apple trees take any calcium during the year by spraying it on, like midsummer? Yes. This is just the way I do it. It's just my opinion. I always like to do calcium fertilizer in the dormant season. I'll have some calcium in that, usually 100 pounds of Calpril or some gypsum or something like that. We've talked about that a little bit. I really like to inject calcium from about full bloom on varieties that need calcium. In an area where you need calcium, I like to pump on a good calcium through the fertigation. And I'll do that, 40 to 45 days after full bloom. And then the transport changes through the phloem. It's no longer effective anymore. Then you have to switch to a foliar calcium, which is what you're talking about. So yes, about 45 days after full bloom, I'll switch over to a foliar. I used to do those religiously every 2 weeks. I don't do that anymore because the more I've learned about the calcium and the more I've kind of tracked it, the more I've come to understand that it really only works if you land it on the target. Like if you get that calcium right on the apple, it'll kind of absorb it. But the idea that you're going to spray that calcium on that leaf and it's going to make its way into that apple at that time of the year, I don't think that's happening. I don't think the calcium moves like that. I think you got to get it right on that apple. So the point is yes, if I'm going into the orchard to do a pass and calcium is compatible with that, I will put calcium in the tank in the foliar right up almost to harvest. So hope that helps, Cotton. Piyush Vista. I'm from Shimla, India. We got a lot of people from India, and this place happens to be at 5,600 feet elevation. That's pretty high. Our old trees, 25 years old, Royal Red Delicious, are not giving any production from the last 5 years. I want to replant. I have M9 and M11. What would you suggest to plant next year to maximize production and quality? Well, I don't know what variety I would plant, to be quite honest with you. It's whatever variety you can sell, and I think just about any variety is going to grow well on M9, M111 at that altitude. That sounds like a good altitude. My question, I guess, is in my mind is if you're going to keep the same spacing, have you considered this 25-year-old tree? You have this big root system, right? And you can graft, we've done this on these big trees. You can graft 6 or 8 sticks on those and weave those together and get that, then you got some horsepower under that root and you can get that tree back into production pretty quickly on a big root like that. 2-3 years, you can get that tree producing fruit again. So consider grafting. That if you want to get production the quickest, that would be the way to do it. With whatever variety that you're thinking, Gala or whatever, you can grow it at that elevation. I mean, 5,600 feet, that might be a great place to grow Honeycrisp. They love high elevation, but I don't know what variety would be best for you. But M9, M11 sounds like a good root. M11, that's a strong root, so it should grow well. So yeah, consider grafting. That would be my advice. That'd be a good way to get those back into production if you're going to keep that same spacing. Uh, Grant Valverde is on. Raj Kishore, Aaron Post, Sharon Reshi, and Ryan Riddy. Welcome. Sounds like you got a good group on tonight. So if you have any questions, put them in those comments. Marlon's going to be, I got to stack it up over here. So, and Neil Shandil, how to stop gumming in cherry trees. Well, the gumming in the cherry trees, that's in essence, that's bacterial canker. It's Pseudomonas. An old cherry tree, it's not a big deal. I've been around cherry trees since I was just a little boy, and the old trees have always had those big knots of gummosis on it. It's natural. You get a virus in that tree, and there's some bacterial canker, and it'll live within that tree, and you can kind of grow it through it. Younger tree, it's quite a bit harder. It really stresses them out, and I have trees as we speak that are literally collapsing, shutting down from bacterial canker, and you have to go just yank those out of there and get them out of the block. How to stop it in the cherry trees? Sanitation. Like I just said, if you got one that's collapsing, get it out of the block. If you see it forming on the tips, you'll see it form as a form of shepherd's crook. That branch will bend over. We just put a video on last week about how to identify that. Go in there and cut low. Go down to an intersection of a limb. When I talk about an intersection of a limb, that's like where a limb grows off. Go all the way down to the intersection and remove that limb and take it out of there. There are products that you can use depending on your area. If copper still works in your area, copper could be effective for you. Here in our area in Washington State, we've kind of gone to lime sulfur and a good product called Cassumin that you can use. So there are products that you can use. And again, this is not a proven product, but I've used forms of hydrogen peroxide before, pulled off the canker, sprayed it on the wound, sanitized it, cleaned it up, and have seen those trees healed up. So several ways to get that. The main thing is don't get it in the first place. And the way to not get it in the first place is bacterial canker likes cold weather. It moves similar to fire blight, but it likes cold weather. So it will move in that cold dormant period if you have moisture. So what we're going to do moving forward, we're going to make sure we prune our cherries first. We're going to prune them very first, right out of the gate, before we have any moisture while those trees are dormant. And we're going to avoid pruning those later during the wet season because they don't like that moisture. So yeah, sanitation, lime sulfur, and keep it cut out of there. Frankie Lopez Sapero says he's referencing a video on apple pruning, and he says, when you say 7 wires, what is the spacing of the wires? The spacing of the wires is 18 inches apart. So what I will do, can you turn that camera over here for me, Marla? This is our, here's our post, and I want 7 wires. So there's 7 wires, right? So on. The first wire is going to be 18 inches off the ground, and that will have branches on it, but it'll also have my drip line on it. So, and then every 18 inches after that will be another wire. So every 18 inches, to your question. First one's 18 inches off the ground. That's where your drip line goes in your bottom wire. So it could be 7 wires, could be 8 wires. Gowan Gani says, what's the best training system in cherry Gisela 5 rootstock? Oh, I don't know the best training system. I've seen those very successful, well, on a 2-liter system. I've seen them on a 3-liter system, alternated in the row. So in other words, 2 on this side, 1 on this side, and then you alternate 2 and 1, right? So you get maximum sunlight. Seen them very successful on a central liter system. Again, I'm just going to be real honest with you. Gowan, I haven't had great luck with the Gisela 5 rootstock. I always try to be positive, but I'm not bullish on Gisela 5. It's just very, very precocious. It just produces a lot of fruit. My best recommendation is you can do just about any training system you'd like to do, whether it's central leader or open vase or a 2 liter system, or even get them on a wire. The key to those Gisela 5s is you got to thin those flowers. When those things bloom and they have thousands and thousands of flowers, you got to get in there and get some of those flowers off, or learn to spray them with ATS and burn them off or something. I think the key to growing big cherries on a Gisela 5 system, you got to get some of those flowers off of there. You got to thin them early. So that's my best advice. Um, Sir, what is the best treatment for root rot? Root rot is Phytophthora. It's a root disease. The best treatment for root rot is really goes hand in hand with different root systems. Somebody mentioned the 111 that can be susceptible to Phytophthora. 106 can be susceptible. So trying to get a rootstock that's not susceptible is very important. Trees don't like wet feet, so you don't want oversaturated soil. I always say that we like to be at 80% of soil moisture capacity, not 100%. Picture a sponge filled 100% of the way up. We don't want that. We want that sponge. We want that soil at about 80%. Trees don't like to have wet feet or oversaturated roots, so avoid that. The treatment, there are a couple of products out there. One of them is called Linebacker. One of them is called Ridamil. I think there are a couple others. Very, very expensive treatments. But we do have areas where we have cases of Phytophthora or collar rot, and we do have to treat those 2 or 3 times a year. So yeah, Linebacker or Ridamil would be my recommendation. Yasir Nabi says, how to increase size at walnut stage of Gala apples. At walnut stage. So he's wondering how to increase the size when that apple is about that big around. Well, it's a good question. I think by the time that apple gets that big around, it's already decided how big it's going to be. That's my honest answer. And the only thing you can do is deduct from its given size potential at that point. That's a long way of saying you got to thin those apples early. If you want to have big galas, you got to get out there and you thin them early. That's the key to having big galas. Whether you thin the flowers or whether you get out there and you chemical thin or you blossom thin, you got to get some of that fruit off of there real early. Beyond that, there are a couple things that you can do. One of the chemical thinners that's available to us, or the conventional type thinners that's available to us for galas, is a product called Maxell. We've used galas on pears and used Maxell on pears, and we've used it quite a bit on galas. And not only will it thin the fruit, but it'll also increase fruit size. So Maxell's a product that you can use, and Problin. We've used Problin before on galas to increase fruit size. Once you get that thing walnut size, it's almost too late. You have to be doing this early. The Maxell and the Problin, those go on full bloom, 80% timing. So it happens really, really early. By the time that thing gets walnut sized, you've probably done everything that you can do except proper water management. Luke Grzorakek, I know I didn't say that right. Plum twin fruits. Any idea how to avoid such amount of twin plums? Huge amount this year will all go to ground. That's a real bummer. I've grown plums in the past. I don't have any right now. Just haven't been able to make any money on them, but I do love growing plums and prunes. It's a stone fruit. We struggle with the same problem in cherries and different varieties of cherries. And what happens is there's just too much heat during that period of cell division, and it creates abnormalities in the form of sutures or doubles. And that's what you're talking about here. What to do about it? At that period of cell division, that highest peak of the summer, we'll spray a product called Surround. It's a kaolin type powdery white product. We'll spray that on the tree, and it helps kind of keep those cooled down. It keeps those buds, those little cells cooled down just a little bit. You can turn on the under trees on an extremely hot day and cool the block down. But it could be a shade cloth. We have some shade cloths. Could be cooling sprinklers. A cooling sprinkler that use misters or something. But just cooling that plant down during cell division. We've had success using Surround a couple of times in just the heat of the summer. Whew, that was a lot. I got through all of them there, honey. So what do you got for me? You got some more? Yeah. Okay, we've got a few more here. So, yeah, okay. Guadalupe Martinez is on board. Nice to have you on board, Guadalupe. Luis Broder, Justin Kolarek, Carlos Perez, Bog Hearn is on board. Shangri-La Farms. I think I've heard of that before. That sounds really cool. Nice to have you on board. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you have questions, please just post them in the comments. Raul Corona says, I have 23 acres of new honeys graft, and I think this is the perfect weather for mildew. You think it's a good time to spray to prevent to wait into mildew? Yes, absolutely, Raul. I would definitely be spraying for mildew. And the fact of the year, during this time of the year, where you have those cool periods, I would be on a calendar program. Depending on your pressure, it could be as close as 7 days, but for sure, somewhere between 7 and 14 days, you should be on a calendar program of going back in with a mildew spray, especially new honey grafts. Absolutely, I would definitely be going on with mildew sprays right now. Cinco Anderson, have you done vision systems for cherry to estimate crop load? I haven't done that. We played around with a lot of vision systems, and we're going to keep working on vision systems. Right now, we have a team of what we call scouts that actually go out there and, like, if we thin, we go count buds. If we prune, we go count buds, and we have a living, breathing program that we enter those into, so that our packing shed and our storage facility, they always know how much fruit is out there on the tree. We track that through the entire year. But you're talking about vision systems. You're talking about a system you can mount on a four-wheeler or a tractor, or anything that's making a path up and down the road that can count, that can look inside with LiDAR technology or whatever, and look into that tree and monitor that fruit. We've tried 2 or 3 of those different companies and different systems, and we're continuing to work with the university on systems, but the technology is just not quite there yet. We've counted and we've done the trips through with the four-wheelers, and our counts have always been a little bit closer, because it's hard for it to look back behind the foliage and see that fruit hiding back there behind the canopy, especially on a V trellis system. Does a lot better on a vertical trellis system. It's getting pretty close, but anytime it has to look back up inside the tree, it really struggles. But I know that every day people are continuing to work with that technology. They're adding AI to that technology. And I know in the course of the next 5 years, it's probably going to be there. So I'm going to keep with it and keep trying different technologies. And we're talking to a doctor at the university now about mounting that technology on a drone and going above the trees and doing it from a drone. So they're going to get it. I have confidence. Cinco Anderson, would you recommend another rate of N per week on a cosmic graft? Um, on a cosmic graft, I wonder how big that graft is. I wonder how big that root system is, that trunk is. Could be that you have a lot of horsepower. I don't know how big your root is and how big that graft is, but if you got a lot of horsepower, could be that you need as much. But I'll tell you what, I'd push it. I'd push that tree. I'd push that thing till the fringes of the leaves start to burn, until I get that thing to the top wire, and then I'd worry about pulling the end back and settling it down. This UFO system that I went out and visited my buddy this week, and it was all the way to the top wire. And I asked him, how much are you going to put on that thing this year? He said, I'm not putting any in on this. This is the 5th year. It's in full production. See, once you get to that point, you spend the next 2 or 3 years trying to settle that tree down, right? It'll tend to have real big fruit in those early years, and it'll kind of be ununiform. But once you get it to the top wire, then you begin to pull that end back, that pull those limbs down, and you settle that tree down. And it'll take it 2 or 3 years to settle down and come into its own. But Cinco, I would just keep the gas pedal to the ground until I get the space filled. That's the name of the game. If I'm trying to do high intensity, high production, the name of the game is to fill space. So keep the pedal down. That's my recommendation. But maybe you don't have to if you have a big root and it's on a big graft. So Raj Kishore Thakur. I want to get that right. He's from Himachal Pradesh, India. Hilly terrain, steep hills. We've got some of those around here. We've been facing phytophthora and replantation issues and decreasing production and alternate bearing, increasing labor costs. If we plant a new orchard, which rootstock would you suggest? Should we import plants or import rootstock and develop here? Boy, that is a good question. Boy, if you can import rootstocks, you know, the rootstock is so important. Um, you're on hilly terrain, steep hills. You got photophyra issues, decreasing production. Boy, it'd be sure nice if you get a good Geneva rootstock. Sure like to see you get you know, sounds like for your area and your soil and those hills, you know, gosh, if you get your hands on a Geneva 890 or Geneva 969, boy, that sounds like that would do you a lot of good. I'm surprised about the photophyra on the hills. Usually that would drain real well, but I don't know what the water situation is there. Alternate bearing, we've spent a lot of time talking about alternate bearing. You know, thin early. You got to get that fruit off early to make sure that you return well the next year. So, you know, work on blossom thinning, lime sulfur for blossom thinning. Work on, you know, chemical thinning. I've got a lot of videos posted on this. I spent a lot of time on this. So please go back to the school, the SKOOL, and there's a lot of videos in there about how you can score those trees, how you can thin early in order to decrease that alternate bearing and scoring. There's a whole host of tools in the tool bag there that I hope you'll take advantage of. But your question specifically is, should I import specific variety or rootstock? Well, it sounds like you already have variety. So if you can get some good wood off of that, good scion wood off of that, and get a good rootstock in, that might be your best bet. If I was you and I was going to replant, I always suggest that you fumigate. You don't want to start all over again with all that photophyra and all those nematodes and all that nasty stuff in your soil. You want to find a way to fumigate, even if you have to do it tree by tree. Fumigate those and get those trees off to a good start. I hope that helps. Aaron Post, I have a question about getting or starting rootstocks and then grafting to it. Getting or starting rootstocks, then grafting to it. Yeah, we've done that a lot. Aaron, we've planted. I haven't done it. In the last 10 years. Oh, there's Aaron again. Okay. How do you start rootstocks for grafting? I'd like to start from nothing to full orchard. I have never done that, and I don't like seedling rootstocks, Aaron. I would really suggest that you buy rootstocks. Find out what rootstock you need and then buy a root. Now, one way you can do it from start to finish on your own, haven't done this in about the last 10 years, but I used to do a lot of it, is just buy the rootstock and then bud on top of those or graft on top of those and then grow it yourself. Get a bamboo in the ground, get a grow tube around that thing and grow it yourself. You can do that. I see people out here do it all the time. It's labor intensive, and it costs you an extra year, but that tree's going to be grown for a year in the nursery. And let's face it, it's not cheap buying trees anymore. I mean, a tree used to be $7. Those days are long gone. It's expensive. So my recommendation for you, if you're going to do it from start to finish, start with a good root. You really want to get a good Geneva rootstock. You know, get yourself a good. I'm not sure what your soil is here, but I would, if I could, I would get a Geneva rootstock. If you have a real heavy soil, you know, something a little stronger like a 969 or an 890. But if you have a sandy, loamy, real strong soil, you might want something like a Geneva 11 or a Geneva 41. But I would, if I was going to do it from start to finish on my own, I would probably buy the rootstocks, put them in the ground, and bud them, and just grow them up from a bud. That's a great way to do that. So it can be done it lots of times, but I will warn you, it's labor intensive. You have to stay on top of that. Okay, we got a couple more. Shari K. Reshi from Jammu, Kashmir, India. We got a lot of folks from around that area there, so nice to have you on board. How to control vigor in HDP apples. HDP, what is that, honey? HDP apple trees. Well, they're apple trees, we know that. As all the fruit buds are getting converted into water shoots, and when to cut those water shoots. Okay. Again, got a lot of videos on this. I would encourage you to look at that school where we put the long version of all those little short videos, and we've talked a lot about this. What you have here is a tree. It wants to be vegetative, or it wants to set fruit buds. It really, you know, the key is finding that balance in between, where you're getting new growth every year, but not excessive growth, not water sprouts, not giant suckers, right? But little shoots, little darts, right? So you don't want excessive growth, and you want fruit buds. You're not out there to grow wood. We don't get paid for growing wood. We get paid for growing fruit. So there's a couple things you can do. If you have a tip-bearing branch, you can pull that branch down, and it will set fruit buds along that branch. That's why on our systems, the very first thing we do, if those branches are growing upright, we pull those branches down. And when we do, that sap will flow down, and it will take that energy that it was expending into that growth, and it will use that energy into converting those fruit buds, and it will begin to set fruit. So pull those branches down. One thing that you can do, considering you're already growing, you're off to a start, you're growing, is, but I mean, you're in India. I'll tell you what we would do here is, instead of dormant pruning those trees when they're in the dormant season, when they don't have their leaves, we would do it in the growing season. We would do that after, around summer solstice, where it's a de-invigorating cut. So find that time of the year in Kashmir, India, where it's not an invigorating cut like in the dormant. Because when you do a cut in the dormant and you cut a 1 year old limb, you encourage it and it just wants to grow. That water sprout will continue to grow. But if you come back after summer solstice and make a non or a de-invigorating cut, you can slow those trees down, and you won't get so many of those water sprouts growing. But beyond that, you're going to have to pull those limbs down. Consider scoring that tree and thin early. You got to get out of that alternate berry. Larry Banchowski is on board. Nice to have you, Larry. Cotton Dalton is on board. I think we just read one of his questions a while ago. Larry Glenda Bringhurst is on board. Sandeep Shendel, Absar Altaf, Francisco Gomez, Elione Garcia. It's nice to have you on board. Thanks for joining us. If you have a question, go ahead and post it in the comments there. What do you suggest to enhance color in Galas? This is Shangri-La Farms. Boy, that's a good question. The very first thing that I like to do to enhance color in Galas is, if it's conventional block, I like to use Apogee. I talked about Apogee last week. It's a great product. It's also called ProHex. You can buy it commercially. And as the fruit begins to grow on the wire, you spray Apogee, and it keeps those shoots real short, so you don't get those long suckers growing up into your windows on the trellis. So I use Apogee, and that really helps for color. That's one thing you can do. Getting out there 3 weeks before harvest and laying down Mylar or reflective paper or Extende. We use Extende, and getting that down so the light reflects back up into the tree. We do that. That really helps. If it's not too hot, one of the things we started doing last year is we bought a de-leafer. So we'll drive down the row a week before harvest or 10 days before harvest. We'll blow all the leaves off of the trees so that it will get color. The very best and the most practical thing you can do to get good color on galas is to thin them correctly and space them when you thin them, so that each apple is getting plenty of light. And as you thin, be conscious of where that apple is and try to leave the apples that are on the outside exposed to the sun. So the very best thing you can do for color in galas starts with thinning, but it also involves several other things, such as Mylar reflective paper or Extende, blowing leaves if you can. And some people have actually used different foliars to enhance color. I've never had great luck with that. Some people swear by it. Akron Sharma Orchards, G Series rootstock. I'm not sure what the question is there. G Series rootstock. I suspect he's talking about Geneva Series rootstock. Spent a lot of time talking about those. Geneva 11, Geneva 41. I got quite a few of those, and we've spent a lot of time. There's a lot of videos about those. The stronger side of that we just talked about would be Geneva 969, Geneva 890. Arun, if you have a specific question about those rootstocks, I'd be happy to answer them for you. Sharik Reshi, can you please answer the question from the comment section too? Yeah, I did those. Those are the ones that I went over at the beginning. So I hope I didn't miss something there. If I missed something, let us know. But what I try to do is during the week, of course, I'm really busy, but during the week, if I get 5 minutes and I have time, I'll try to answer a couple of questions. And so through the week, I try to answer as many as I can as practical, but I'm pretty busy. I'm a full-time general manager of orchards, and I'm a pastor. I preach every Sunday, and with my wife's help, we manage this page. So I'm a pretty busy guy, but I do try to answer the questions throughout the week. But the ones that I can't get to, generally, those are the ones when we start out at 6 o'clock. We answer those on Sunday nights right out of the gate. So we've done that. But if I missed one, please post it and we'll try to get to it. Carlos Perez, best way to get rid of ground squirrels. Boy, we do have ground squirrels in some places. Um, best way to get rid of ground squirrels. Boy, I don't really want to say. Whatever it takes. Yeah, you can trap them and boy, yeah, I don't know. Carlos, why don't you tell us the best way to get rid of those ground squirrels? Hey, that's all I've got. Marlon, do we have anything else? Oh, we have more. Oh my goodness. Okay. Oh my goodness. Oh, I thought I was almost finished here. Okay. Oh, lots of questions tonight. That's great. Usually this takes about an hour on Sunday night, but I'm really, really happy about the participation. We've got a lot of questions here. This question's an easy one. I'll answer this real fast. Obsar Altov said, which system is better, V trellis or vertical one in terms of production? V trellis. It's not even close. Vertical trellis, I love it. You can get good production on a vertical trellis, but there is no question you will get much better production on a V trellis. Two walls of fruit in that same amount of space. Boy, we've seen great production on V trellis. I love V trellis. Grant Valverde, trying to do apples in the southeast. I know varieties are key with low chill hours. Yeah, that's cool. Back in the southeast, I wonder where that would be in the southeast. Okay, would that be like North Carolina or key with low chill hours? That would be the issue. Although California is able to grow apples and cherries and tree fruit successfully, and they have very low chill hours. And I lived 6 years in North Carolina, and I know they get a winter season. So yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but that's pretty neat. I wonder where you are. Raj Kishore Thakur, what hormone to use for feather formation in grafted whip rootstock? I think that GA3 works. Gibberellum. Other people might have something that they use, but that's what I've used in the past. What I like to do is notch right above the bud, about a half inch above the bud, and put a little bit of Promolin or GA3 on there, Gibberellum, and with a little bit of paint in it. And I can get limbs right where I want them on the wires and get them to come on the wires. So I've used Gibberellum, but that's all I've used. But I'm sure nurseries have superior products and know a lot more about it than I do. And there's a lot of nurseries on this page. So if you can help us out, please comment. Sandeep Shandell says, how much growth per year per plant is perfect for M9 trees? How much growth per year per plant? 3 or 4 feet. I want them to grow 3 or 4 feet. I want to get there. If it's 11 feet or 12 feet to the top of that wire, I want to get it done in 3 years. So 3 to 4 feet is what I would consider good growth. Nick Williams, backyard tree update video. Okay. What did you do for all the water sprouts going straight up? Do you go back to the main branch or you go back to a second bud? I go back to a second bud. And if you want to stop those and set a terminal bud so that it doesn't just keep growing, wait till after summer solstice, Nick. So in other words, what you're talking about is here's my tree coming up and it's coming off the wire here. And here's these branches and they have a tendency to grow real tall. And we're wanting to keep them short like this, right? So what I would do is choose a short one to start with, something about pencil length. But when you get out about the middle of July, come in there and do a de-invigorating cut those off. And if they're super strong, if they're competitive, just remove them. But if they're pencil sized, then cut them off at about 4 inches or 2 or 3 buds, and that'll be a nice little fruiting surface for you for next year. So do that as a summer cut. Your question is second buds. I'd leave 3 or 4 buds on those. Give yourself some options. Matsun Ninto, which rootstock is better than G5 for intensive planting? Better than G5. I suspect you're talking about Gisela 5. Probably talking about cherries. Which is better than G5? Okay, I'm going to assume you're talking about cherries, and I'm going to assume you're talking about Gisela, not a Geneva. G5. I think you're talking about a Gisela 5. What's better, Gisela 6 or Gisela 12 is a superior rootstock. There's some crimps, 14 rootstocks that are pretty good rootstocks out there. I like Gisela 6 and Gisela 12. That would be my recommendation. Nate Babu Babe, can I mix gibberellic acid with calcium chloride dehydrate to spray on apples? If yes, what will be its benefits? It's possible, Nate Rabu, that you could do that. I wouldn't do it, and I'm not going to recommend you do it. I don't. Yeah, you got to be real careful about what you mix calcium with or anything else. And the gibberellic acid, that's such an important spray. The timing of that is so important. You want to get the temperature right on that. You want to have good 80 degrees. You want that timing to be right. Is it possible to do some chelated form of calcium with it? Maybe, but I'm not recommending it. I would stay away from it and do it in 2 applications. Lala Thakur, second year Envy. Wonderful. Do you summer prune Envy too? I do. We have Envy that are organic and conventional. And on the conventional, I really like to use the apogee that I've been talking about so that I don't have to summer prune. I'll come in there at pink just as soon as those buds start pushing, just the minute they start pushing, even at pink stage, and I'll start spraying with those with apogee, and I'll keep them short. Those leaves will be so close together. I'll keep them about that short so that I don't have to summer prune them. But if it's an organic block, or for some reason they get away from me and the apogee is not effective, and I have to come in and do summer pruning, yes, I will. But I want to do a deinvigorating cut, so I'm going to go out to about the middle of July after summer solstice and do that. Glad to see that you have Envy. Love Envy. That's a great tree. It's grower friendly. Second year, you'll get a few apples off of those things in the second year. So yeah, that's a great new apple that it's club variety, and we've got quite a few of those, and it's a fun apple to grow. It's a great apple. Frankie Lopez Sapero, when talking about a feather tree, also add, what is a feather tree? Oh, okay. When he's talking about a feathered tree, what we're talking about is the branches on the tree. We back over here. So if this is the tree right here, this is the trunk, right? I sometimes call this would be kind of the trunk, right? And I call this the column. This is the part that we're going to tie up that string and get to the top wire. I always like to have about 10 or 12 apples right on the column. But when we talk about a feathered tree, we're talking about these beautiful branches that grow off of that tree. Those are called, see how that looks like a feather? We call those the feathers. And in a structured system, in a formal system, we're going to have wires on here, and we're going to pull those down on the wire. We're going to pull them down flat and fruit them. So that's what we mean by a feathered tree. It's just those branches that come off of that. That's our feathers. So hopefully you get good feathers from a nursery, but you can also get those from notching and Promlin. You can select those and pull them down the wire. So that's all that is. Feathered tree is just the branches that come off of that tree that provide your fruit. I hope that helps, Frankie. Lenny, we got a lot of questions tonight. Caleb Followville says, what are your thoughts on Tamara cherry on Colt rootstock grown on steep leader system, yield, fruit quality issues, etc.? I don't have any Tamara cherry, and you're one of several growers that tell me that you have Tamara, Caleb, but I don't know anything about that cherry. I haven't had good luck on Colt rootstock. That hasn't been it hasn't been consistent for us here. It's just been really hard to set a good consistent crop. But if I had my choice, your question is about the system. What about it grown on a steep leader system yield, fruit quality? I like steep leader tree. Everything I do is a steep leader tree or a 2 liter. I'll either do a 2 liter in a Y, or I do a steep leader. So you can get a lot of tonnage on a steep leader. I'm picking 8-9 tons off a steep leader system right now. I wish I knew more about a Tamara cherry. I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just not a fan of Colt rootstocks. Haven't had good luck with them. But you have what you have. I understand that. Got a lot of. Sometimes you have what you have. Marty Van Bree on bird control. What about netting? Yeah, what about netting? That's a great idea. It's expensive, and yeah, I wish I had more netting. We have shade covers, and we have hail protectant, and yeah, why not netting? There are some big cherry orchards around here that have gone to the extra expensive netting. It's just a matter of cost. But yeah, what about netting? That's a great idea. Yes. My backyard trees. Boyacon Yunez on gibberellic acid. What about apples? When should we spray GA3? You should spray GA3 on apples at about 80% to 100% full bloom. That's the ideal timing. But I'm going to tell you, Boyacon, the most important thing is temperature. Given the choice between 80 to 100% full bloom and waiting for good weather, plus or minus 2 or 3 days before or after that, I'll go with the good weather every time. So here in our area, we want to have a good 70, 80 degree weather for that gibberellic acid to work. But if you can hit that timing right at about 80 to 100% full bloom and hit those good 70, 80 degree temperatures, you can do a real good job with it. So that's what we do. Terry Plant. Hi, Terry. Nice to have you on board tonight. On gibberellic acid, I had a guy tell me that if I spray the flower of grapes, I'd get bigger grapes because it would thin the cluster. Sadly, I didn't get any grapes that year after I sprayed. Yeah. I'm laughing because one year I joined a pumpkin contest, a giant pumpkin contest. And when that pumpkin came out, I sprayed that bromelain inside that flower. I ended up with about a 600-pound pumpkin. It was warped and morphed. I mean, it was the ugliest thing you ever saw. But I don't know if it was the GA that did it or not. But I suspect it had something to do with it. Yeah, I've never tried gibberellic acid on grapes, and now I know. Now we both know that it will have a thinning effect. It thinned the cluster. So, sorry to hear that, Terry, but thanks for sharing it with us. Now we all know. We do have grapes. Munib, my 19-year-old Red Delicious has flowers every year, but very low fruits. Should I go for double per sprays on grafting pollination branches in traditional apple orchards? Should I go for double per sprays on grafting pollination in traditional apple trees after petal fall? Hardly few fruits developed. Yeah, we do that. Monique, what's that, honey?
Double PJR.
Double PGR. Oh, yeah. What we have done in incidents like that where we felt like we don't have enough pollen is we'll go in there and grab a branch and graft on another pollinator branch. You're asking about PGRs. I don't know about that. I do know on Red Delicious, I had a Red Delicious block about 10 years ago that was 100 bins per acre every single year. Then it froze out one year, and then it wouldn't set a crop. Wouldn't set a crop till about 2 years ago, and now it seems like I have back into a rhythm. How did we do it? Thinning it. Even in the year that didn't have anything, go in there and thin it hard, thin it early, go in there and knock that fruit off of it and get it back into that cycle of production. So that's my best advice on a Red Delicious tree. I proved to myself that you can kind of get it back into a cycle. You just have to be real aggressive and thin them early. Rihan Farouk, Shanab Agro. I'd like to request your guidance in recommending some good books to improve my knowledge and skills in apple cultivation. Well, I've recommended that book by Bruce Barrett, Intensive Orchard Management. That's one I would recommend. I'll come up with a couple other books to recommend. I've got a whole bookshelf full in. My biggest problem is a couple of years ago, I decided I was going to pass on my large collection of books to my managers that I'm trying to mentor, and I gave away most of my books a couple of years ago, but I have some good ones that I would recommend. But keep following the page. Keep following the page and watching the videos. That's why we do this. We're trying to share that knowledge with you. Sasklain Mushtaq, Kuldeep Kanwar, Thakur, Papu James, Per Louis Caballos, Nitish Quinteta. It's nice to have you on board. I got a big group tonight. Justin Koleric. I need another foot of growth out of my trees. Do I pull off all the blossoms on the top? Yep. Honeycrisp on M9337. I got a lot of those. Picture leader close to top wire. Do I pull off all the blossoms on the top? Absolutely. That top leader, when you're trying to grow that leader, you're almost to the top, so that means you're in your production. I don't know if you're a fourth or fifth leaf, but you're struggling to get that leader just to that top feet. Go down about a foot and a half below the top of that leader. Thin all the apples off, thin all the flowers off, so you concentrate all of that energy into the top. The other thing that you can do is when that thing starts giving you shoots up the top by that leader, go in there and pinch everything off except the leader. So you focus all that energy into the leader, pinch all those other shoots off, and get that thing to grow. So absolutely, yes, I would do that. Viryanda Kanwar, which rootstock is best for Gisela and Kremsk? Kremsk, I don't know a lot about. I've grown a few of those. I think that's a Russian rootstock. Kremsk 14, 17, 19. I think it's a good rootstock. I think that up until Gisela's comes along, we were taking a hard look at that. But the best rootstock for Gisela is Gisela 6 and Gisela 12, in my opinion. Really like those rootstocks. Best treatment, Yasir Rabi, best treatment for cholera. We just went over that. Trees don't like wet. Be selective about your rootstocks in real wet areas. where you have a real heavy soil, stay away from 106s, 111s. Rootstocks that are prone to collar rot, stay away from those. Keep your soil moisture capacity about 80%. You don't want to make sure you have good drainage. The chemical treatments would be Linebacker and Ridamil are the two that I know of and that I use. So that's my best advice. TJ Singh. Hi, Rob. I'm from Stockton, California. I have an orchard with issue of cherry leaf spot. Do you have an experience how to deal with it right now? Specifically, we have grafts of royal hazel predominantly elated, some in corals too, cherry leaf spot. Thank goodness I don't have that, TJ. We don't have cherry leaf spot here and don't really want it. But sorry that you have it. It's nice to hear from a California cherry grower. So, Stockton, California. I think that's down in the Lodi Valley. I've done some trips down in that area just looking at cherries. So, yeah, it'd be nice to visit you someday. We don't have cherry leaf spot, so I wish I could help you. Guzar Ahmad, please mention cherry varieties having good crack resistance and big size. Yeah. Um, I moved away from some, like it, tie it, and I wasn't having much luck with that because of those very reasons. Some that have good size, Coral Champagne. That's a nice big cherry. They'll all be resistant to splitting. That's a good one. Skeena's a good cherry. I like that cherry. Sweetheart is a late cherry that I think is a very good cherry. For a light cherry, a Rainier or early Robin is a good cherry. But yeah, my favorite new cherry that I really like is Coral Champagne. One that I'll mention is not a big cherry. You're mentioning big size. Black Pearl doesn't tend to be big size, but I really like that cherry too. Paul Mudasir on Cosmic Crisp. Is it pollinizer? It does take a pollinizer. Uh, um, Cosmic Crisp. We use Granny Smith for a pollinizer. We also use Winter Banana, and I think we also have Indian Summer crabapple trees out there. It does need a pollinizer. It needs a lot of pollen. One of the things about Cosmic Crisp is in some areas it can have a tendency to not want to set, and bud density can be an issue. um, Says, is it tip bearing? I found it if you pull those limbs down, they'll set little darts and set fruits all along those lateral branches. But it does need pollinizers and it needs a lot of pollen. So make sure you get plenty of pollinizers out there. On a Cosmic Crisp, I would have at least 4%, 4 pollinizers per every 100 trees spiked out into the block. Sandeep Shardy, for Galas in first 3 years, what's the ideal growth per year? We just answered a very similar question. I would say 3 feet. 3 to 4 feet would be fantastic. You want to get it up. You want to be in production by the third leaf. By the fourth leaf, you want to be the top wire. By the fifth leaf, you want to have all that space filled. Sharik Rushi, we've already done bending in these trees. Still, buds do not get converted into water shoots, almost 2 to 3 feet long. 2 to 3 feet long. Wow. You want to cut it out. Cut it out during the time of the year. Again, I don't know your season there when you're going to want to cut that out, but when it's a de-invigorating cut, you're going to want to get in there if those are too big and cut those out of there. Pull them down. Yeah, that's the only thing I know to do to take that vigor out of those limbs and get them into production. Be patient. Pull them down. They'll set it. They'll set a terminal bud at cell division, but you got to pull those down and get them into production. That's the key. That's what's going to settle those trees down. Sir, how to control frost injury and delicious variety, sir. How to control frost injury. Frost control. Got a whole series of videos on frost control that we talked about in the frost season this year. Just under tree sprinklers is a system we use. We have heaters out in the block. You got to keep that temperature above 32 degrees. That's the key. Could be that you need a wind machine. Wind machines that we have here in the Yakima Valley, they rotate around in circles. They do about 10 or 12 acres at a time. And they blow out that cold air. That's how it works. The warm layer of air lies above the cold air. This cold layer that's on the ground that freezes the trees. And when that wind machine blows around, it blows out the cold air and that warm air drops. And it keeps doing that. It keeps spinning around all night. That's how that works. So, the way we do it is water. The heat off that water give you kinetic energy, and we'll actually heat those buds a little bit. Or wind machines is how I know to do it. Luis Sabalos, hi. What type of fertilizer can I use for my cherry tree? You want to have a good mix with NPK and whatever your soil needs. I don't know what your pH is, but if you have a high pH, you're going to want to have something in there that'll drive that pH down, keep it as close to neutral as you possibly can. Probably a little bit of calcium. But yeah, in the dormant, I would have a good dry mix that addresses all the needs of my soil, what my soil lacks and what my soil needs. Beyond that, for a cheaper fertilizer, after we've kind of got those on, we'll go to just a cheap UN32 or a CAN 17, some cheap form of N that you can get out there, and just a lot of N every single week is the best thing to get those cherry trees growing. But you got to have that NPK first. You need that potassium for root development. Thing about cherry that you want to realize is in a young cherry tree, even after you harvest the tree, once you pick that fruit and the fruit comes off of the tree is going to give you a new flush of growth in the roots. And that's actually an ideal time. Doesn't work that way in apples. We're trying to shut them down. But in the cherry trees, if you get them off early, like we're doing now on those young trees that you're still trying to grow, as soon as that fruit's off, the natural reaction of the tree is it'll give you a little flush of growth, and you can fertilize them at that point and get a little more growth out of those trees even after harvest. So I would recommend doing that. On a full-grown tree, you don't want to do that. On a full-grown tree that you don't need to keep adding fertilizer to, I always like to, this is a tree that's already filled its space. After I pick those trees so that I don't get that new flush of growth, I will shut that tree down. I'll stress it out. I'll pull the water away from that tree and stress it out until it stops growing, and it does what we call it checks off. And when it checks off, it'll stop growing. It'll set a little terminal bud right on the end, and that's what you want. So on those big trees that you're not trying to grow, you're going to try to pull the water away from them and stress them out right after harvest. Shut them down so you don't get that extra flush of growth. But on a tree that you're trying to grow, you're going to do the opposite. You're going to keep the water going to it. You're going to flush that growth. You're going to fertilize them again and get a little more growth out of them after harvest. As you have so much experience in Cosmic Crisp, which disease is most annoying in Cosmic Crisp, like Red Delicious have alternary and Gala have powdery mildew? What's the most annoying thing disease in Cosmic Crisp? I've seen them with green spot, but it hasn't been bad. When the apple gets about this big and it's cold out, you have to protect them because they're very, very sensitive, and they can freeze and they can rust around the whole apple. Lost, 20, 30 acres to that last year. So they're sensitive to that. Beyond that, I haven't seen much in the way of Cosmic Crisp, but they're not real prone to bitter pit. They're not real prone internal problems. They're not real prone to green spot. I've seen a little bit of in there, but not really a lot. I would say maybe the biggest thing is mildew. They can have low bud density if you're not careful. One of the things that contributes to that is mildew. So probably the biggest thing would be mildew. Staying on top of the mildew program. Great apple though. I love Cosmic Crisp. Salty Dog 1488 is following from YouTube. He says, "Is there a way to safely prune fruit trees like apple, pear, peaches during summer months?" Yeah, you can. Just bear in mind that when you do that, it's de-invigorating. So you're gonna slow that tree and shut that tree down. So instead of that tree continuing to grow, you're going to stress it out. You're going to stunt it. It's probably going to stop growing. But sometimes we do that very strategically and very intentionally. We want to summer prune. So yes, you can absolutely safely prune trees. And yeah, the further you get away from summer solstice, it's really no problem. You can get in there and prune those trees about any time. Rajat Mokta, why does Gala apple show regression? How serious is this problem? What causes it? Excess nitrogen or other factors? And what are the best management solutions? I think what you're talking about here is reversion. And it can happen in specific sports of galas. We do see it in Buckeye galas. And what can you do about it? I don't know that there is much you can do about it other than choosing a good sport. I think Buckeye Gala has been a good sport for us. But even in Buckeye, we'll go out in a block and you'll at harvest time, you'll see trees out there that are still green. They're not even close to being ready to harvest. And if you wait 2 or 3 weeks, that apple will probably come along and be ready to pick. So what is it? It's an apple that's reverted to its original sport, whatever that might have been, to its original strain. What do you do about it? What we do is we go out in those blocks when it starts to become too big a problem. During harvest time, We flag the trees that have the very best apples, the best color that we know is that given Gala sport. We flag those, we leave those flags on there until winter time. Then in the dormant, we go back on those really good trees that have really good color, and then we cut scion wood, we cut grafting wood, we store it over the winter, and then we come back out there in the early spring and we graft those over. We just cut them off, regraft them, and get them back into production. But I think what you see in there, Rayot, is reversion, very normal and prominent, I would say, in Galas. In other words, I see it in Galas more than anything else. Raj Kishore Thakur, we're down to the last two here, says, thank you for your suggestion. One more question. I've grafted apricot local rootstock. Apricots? Oh, on local rootstock called Chuli. But grafting European apricot varieties on local apricot rootstock, we have some severe bacterial gamosis issues because the rootstock's too close for getting rid of bacterial gamosis and early fruitation. Oh boy. Grafting European bacterial gamosis. Boy, that's tough. Boy, that's a good situation for starting over, and that's why I made a comment a while ago about fumigating sometimes when you start over. But in this case, seems like you've grafted over and you've got some bad scion wood and you've got some bacterial canker and gamosis in there. I'm going to give you my best recommendation, and it's not what the university is going to tell you, and I'm not disparaging the university. I love their work, and I love working closely with them, but treat them. Good sanitation, cut it, get it out of there. What's obvious, if that tree begins to collapse on you, just root it out of there as fast as you possibly can. Get it out of the field and burn it. Treat it with copper, lime sulfur, Cassumin, whatever products that you have at your disposal. But the advice that I'm going to give you is grow them through it. Push those trees, push them hard, and grow them through it. We have entire orchards of full-grown, full-producing trees, producing 8-9 tons per acre right now, that you can look in the tree and see the bacterial canker oozing out of the tree, and we managed to grow those trees through it and keep them in production. So a tree in a commercial setting these days, it has to be productive. And if it's not productive, you have to lay the axe to the root. It's as simple as that. That's the cold hard truth of it. So the reality of high intensity production, or a tree in my backyard for that matter, is it really has to produce, or we have to do something different. So sounds like you're at that point to where you're going to have to do something drastic. Nitish Kimteta says, it's recommended here calcium chloride plus ethyl 30 days before harvest. Do you recommend this spray? Up until 2 years ago, yes, I would still recommend the calcium chloride 30 days before harvest, and even up till 2 or 3 weeks before harvest. Yes, I would recommend doing the calcium chloride. It's good for the apple. Ethyl, we've gotten away from it. The reason you would do ethyl is for return bloom. That ethyl's real good. It'll stunt that tree. It'll stress those buds, and it'll help you set buds for next year. So that's for your return bloom. That's why you do that late season ethyl, and even ethyl at thinning time. That's why you would have that Edifon or ethyl in that mix. We don't do it anymore because our buyers don't want ethyl that close to harvest, so we don't do it anymore. We pulled ethyl out of the mix, and we don't do that late season ethyl anymore. But it's only been the last 2 years that we've stopped doing that. But I understand why you would do it. The reason that you would do it is for your return bloom next year. So some of the guys that were asking about that in your area, if you can use ethyl at that 45 days, I would do it 45 days post bloom. I think is the better timing for that. But some of the other guys were asking about their alternation problems. That's something else you can do. You can do that ethyl 45 days post bloom, and it will help you set buds for next year. Oh, okay, last one. Okay, yeah, we've got an hour and a half. That's quite a bit longer than we normally do. So this is going to be the last question, honey. Manish Sombra, can Cosmic Chris apple grown at a high elevation of 8,200 feet? Wow. Go on M9 rootstock. Our winters can reach temperatures of 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. Soil slightly heavy. Would M9 be suitable, or do you recommend different rootstock for Cosmic? M9 is a good rootstock. 8,200 feet. Wow, that's incredible. We don't grow anything at that type of elevation. I would love to see a picture of that. If you can send us a picture of that. Yeah, M9. That's a good root. It's hardy. it's going to be as good a root as any. Would I recommend a different rootstock for Cosmic? Yeah, I would recommend at this soil at 8,200 feet. I'd probably recommend a Geneva 890 or a Geneva 969. I would probably recommend one of those. But if you have M9, I think that's a good hardy rootstock. Uh, it's got some horsepower behind it, and I think it would do real well. Okay, what you got there? Neil Shondell, please name some lime sulfur products. We don't have them here. I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but the lime sulfur products is just simply lime sulfur. That's what it is. It's lime sulfur. It's mined, and we buy it in big 150-gallon cage tanks, and it's lime sulfur. You know, that stuff that smells like rotten eggs that your dad was using 100 years ago. It's still the same stuff. So it's a mined product. It's actually, you know, sulfur. It's lime sulfur. So I don't really have a product name. We just simply call it lime sulfur. We don't have them here. I'm surprised you don't have that there. Boy, any chemical company should be able to get you lime sulfur. That's a very, very, very common product. So I'm real surprised you don't have it there. But you don't have lime sulfur. You know, I'm not sure what the treatment is, but maybe look into copper if you can get that. So I hope that helps you, Neil. That's all we have. Yeah, that was fun. Lots of questions. Thanks for following. Appreciate it. Click that follow button, that subscribe button. That really helps. I think we grew by 1,000 people. So it's nice to have everyone on board. Nice to have you following. Please continue to send those pictures of your ranches. We want to know what you're farming and where you're farming. We enjoy the interaction. I want to thank my wife Marlon for managing this page and for doing all the editing and the reels and all the work that goes into that. And I want to thank you for joining us here every Sunday for this Facebook, YouTube Live. With that, I've got a lot of work to do. I got to get out there in the morning and find some more cherries to pick. So with that, we'll see you out there. Alan, it's nice to have you on board. Good night. Wow.